planning and leadership in general is something that I'm super passionate about. So I literally took out my notebook and I have pages and pages and pages of just notes about this whole concept. And so I was like, what could I put together, and what could I put together that would make sense? And it's not just stuck in my Emily brain, but it's actually like out in a way that's cohesive and would make sense to everyone else. So I am super excited to talk about this. Like Sarah said, my name is Emily Saul-Frank, and as an area director on staff, I get to work with 8 different Kiwanis districts, all the way from Eastern Canada and Caribbean, all the way up to New England and Bermuda, and some many districts in between. So it is crazy how each district is so different, and they're so alike in so many ways, but every district is so independent, and they do things their own way, and I love it. But what Sarah mentioned at the beginning of this is that the concept of succession planning, if you will, is something that is trending as a struggle across all membership organizations. I am definitely a learner. So I spend so much time reading articles, listening to podcasts, reading books, having conversations, and talking with my peers and other organizations. And they're like, yeah, this is not just a struggle for Kiwanis. This is a struggle for almost every membership organization right now. We could probably go so far as to say this is a struggle worldwide with churches and politics and schools and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and dive deep into it. Leadership and succession planning. So the first thing we need to talk about is we need to talk about what is succession planning. Okay. Well, I pulled up a definition, and there's so many different definitions. You could probably find your own, but it would probably sound something similar to this: that succession planning is the process and strategy for replacement planning or passing on leadership roles. It is used to identify and develop new potential leaders who can move into leadership roles when they become vacant. So what does that mean? Well, another way to describe that is if you think maybe as a football team, right? So we have our quarterback, but then we have the second and third string quarterback, right? So when that quarterback gets hurt or needs to step out for a minute, we have other people who can fill that position. The same thing with plays and understudies. So whenever we have maybe the lead actor is sick, they have an understudy who can fill that role and really help with that void. So why are we talking about this? I think, again, like I said, this is a problem that many organizations are feeling, but I want you to kind of keep an open mind in context of this. So this succession planning is not just for your club presidents. It is not just for the lieutenant governor role. It is not just for district roles. This is for every leadership role that we have in Kiwanis and beyond. And I hate to say this, but these friends that are on this call right now, you have leader written across your forehead, whether you think you do or not, because you are here tonight. You are here, you are learning more, and whether you're voluntold or volunteered to be here, I'm glad you are, and you have leader written on your forehead, and I'm excited to work with you in that capacity. So the other thing I want you to be thinking about is I want you to take a minute and reflect on your own club. Okay, so why are you here? Why are you here right now? Is it because in your club experience, you have never had someone step up to take on leadership roles? Is it because maybe the right people aren't stepping up? Maybe it's because you can't get someone to step down from a leadership position. Maybe it's because you have a really great leadership pipeline and you have some knowledge that you can share with us tonight. And I really hope that's partly of the case, right? So the other thing is that regardless of what your leadership pipeline looks like and what that succession planning may or may not look like, we always have to have a plan, and we're going to dive right into that plan. But before we continue, I just want you to hear me say that I could get up here and talk all day long. I could talk until way past y'all's bedtime. But I know that you will learn a lot more from each other than you ever will just from me. So that's why I'm going to ask you to, when you have a thought or a comment, please feel free to unmute yourself. This is a good size group that we can do that. We can utilize the chat feature, and Sarah is going to help me with that, monitor that too. But please feel free to interact with me. You know that I would love that more than you'll ever know. So let's dive into that plan, okay? Why do we need a plan? Like, why is it important to have a plan and to talk about succession planning? I think it's so important for so many reasons. And I have a couple of those reasons up on the screen right now. Number one being, it ensures that we're saving time in finding the best candidate. Notice I didn't say any candidate. It helps us find the best candidate, okay? And what I mean by that is maybe we need some diversity in our pool. So this allows us to have an opportunity that if we need more females on our board or in our club, this gives us an opportunity to do that. Maybe that means we need someone who has a financial background and we don't have someone in leadership like that. Well, that would give us an opportunity to find someone who's going to be the best candidate because they have that specific background. Okay. But the next concept is that it's going to ensure that knowledge is passed down. Okay. I have been a Kiwanis member for 2 years, and I can almost guarantee that I am the youngest Kiwanis member here, not in terms of my age, but in terms of how long I've been a member, right? There are people who have been members 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Like a long time. And so you have all of this, knowledge and institutional knowledge in your head, so that if we don't share that knowledge, then we're going to miss out on it. And the people that we continue to follow after us, they're not going to know. So that is one of the most important reasons to have a leadership pipeline. I think that that's also, it goes with helping to equip the incoming members and our incoming leaders with everything they need to succeed in that role. Also, we need to ensure that the organization is able to continue following its strategic plan. Okay, and what do I mean by that? That we need a plan because you should, as a club, have some type of strategic plan. If you don't, that's another session we could have all about strategic plans. And I know Sarah is very passionate about that. And there's definitely one for the district. And it's something that is always good to have. And with that, it's so important for us to have that, because I think we all need to have goals and we need to make sure that we are following those plans. And who executes the strategic plan? Well, it's the members and the leaders in our clubs that do that, right? So we need to have people who are able to not only execute those plans, but help us challenge those, help us make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible. Okay. And then also, it's so good to have succession planning because it helps with that smooth transition, right? In the Kiwanis structure right now, and again, this is very organic in that it changes a little bit per district. So typically right now, what we have is there is a new club president every year. However, it might look like some districts, such as Pennsylvania, has the trustee system. So they get new trustees every 3 years, Sarah? Yeah, every 3 years. But my friend Bill Abbott in Wisconsin, Upper Michigan, they have lieutenant governors who are there for 2 years. They have 2-year terms. So it's just a little bit different, but we need to make sure that what we are doing is that we have those smooth transition plans if and when we need to execute them. So now that we have a plan, I want to talk to us about how we execute that plan. However, before we can even talk about that, we have to make sure that we're looking at the volunteer experience, okay? Here's my biggest question for you. Are you having a positive experience right now as a member? The reason I'm even asking that is because it sounds silly, but here's the thing. It is so important that we are having a good membership experience, because if we're not, we're doing something wrong, friends, and we need to reevaluate that, right? If we're not having fun in our clubs, then we need to be doing something different, because I know we all spend a lot of time with Kiwanis, and that if we're not having fun, what are we doing, right? We as humans, and we as people who are trying to open our lives to Kiwanians and future Kiwanians, the number one thing that we're competing against is people's time, right? So we all wear multiple hats. We, may have partners, we have friends, we may have family, we may have pets, we may have jobs or other activities that are important to us. And we need to make sure that the time that we are taking from people and asking people to give is being spent in a valuable way. So one of the things that is easy to do about that is say, hey, thank you for being here tonight. I know you had a choice of what to be doing, and I'm glad you're hanging out with me for a little bit. So thank you for using your time to do that. So like I said, we need to make sure that we're having this experience. So we've already talked about, if you're not having fun, let's do that. Second, let's take a deep dive and look into our clubs. Okay, let's put on our reflection hat for a minute. Is there always someone in line in your club to step into a position? When your membership chair has finished their year, is there someone that's jumping into that position saying, pick me, pick me? Okay, if not, what would that look like? What would that look like? Is there someone who is always running for president and there's someone that's always running against them? So do you have contested elections for club president? If so, what would that look like? What would it look like if you had people who were volunteering to be leaders versus just begging them, saying, Judy, will you please do this? We really need you to, please, right? Like, what would that look like? So let's do a pulse check, if we will. So in the chat, feel free to let me know, where are you at in this? Is leadership something that people are knocking down the door to do in your club? Are they begging to be leaders? Or are you having to pull teeth to do that? What does that look like? Or feel free to unmute yourself and talk with me for a little bit. Are we begging for leadership positions, or are people volunteering to do it? Leadership is a struggle in our
always
club.
Seems to be begging. I mean, not necessarily begging, but at least I don't have the same, in my individual club, we don't have the same person in the same office year after year. And that's a huge problem in some clubs because, as you said, they get stale. New ideas and new mindsets aren't even brought in.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Judy says it's a mix for my club, but mostly begging. Sarah says, when I find when I ask someone to take something on, they will, but they have to be asked. Yep. Patty, always begging for leaders. Penny, mostly begging, at least right now. Yeah, the last 2 years have been tough. I'm glad you brought that up because I think we need to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge what season we're in, and does today look different than it did 2 years ago? Probably, right? So if that's where we are, we need to be mindful of that. And we need to say, okay, we're acknowledging where we are, and we can only go up from here, right? We can only go up from here, friends. That's what I'm happy to tell you. Okay. So where do we begin? Let's talk about that process. Okay. So leaders, okay. Good leaders, in my opinion, good leaders focus on the mission, not themselves. Okay. Good leaders are the ones who are giving credit to other people for success, regardless of if they played a part in it. Good leaders typically tend to blame themselves for failures. Good leaders are great at developing teams. And most importantly, good leaders create a succession plan. Every leader that I have ever talked to, I have said this because when I was a leader in a leadership position in multiple ways, someone told me this and it stuck with me forever. Okay. So let me start. Conrad, you are such a good leader. You are doing amazing things, and I'm so thankful for you. And the work and the difference that you're going to make after you is 10 times more important than anything you will ever do. Right. And I think we need to acknowledge that. You are all leaders and you're all doing amazing things. But what happens after you is 10 times more important than anything you will ever do. I think that's so crucial to the conversation because we need to know that what comes after us matters and we have to focus on that. And friends, that's not easy to do. It's really hard for me to focus on what's going to happen after me when I'm so, focused on what I'm doing today and what I'm doing tomorrow, right? We have to be future minded, and that's hard. I struggle with that. So if we're going to have great leaders, how do we find them, and what kind of characteristics do they have? Well, I have a couple of things on the screen I want to throw up there and kind of talk about. Okay. So qualities of a good leader, okay, they're action oriented. What do I mean by that? They are the ones that are going to be saying, hey, I want to do this, or let's do this, or let's make something happen, right? They're skilled listeners. There's a cheesy saying, and I love it, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen more than we speak, right? And I think that that's so true. So they're the ones that are not only listening, but they're asking the right questions. They're the ones that really take those key nuggets of information and do something with them, right? They're also typically the ones that are heard and most well respected in the organization that you're in. Okay. They're also typically problem solvers. Okay. As a Kiwanis leader, you're faced with so many problems, right? And as a leader, you typically tend to have people coming to you with problems versus just like, when was the last time someone came to you? I have a solution, right? Like they're coming to you saying, here's my 10 problems, solve them, right? What if that was our day-to-day? That'd be great. Sarah would never quit being a governor, right? We would all have a different attitude about it. But a problem solver, those people that are going to be able to say, hey, here's the problem, but also they're going to challenge you to come up with solutions too. Okay. Leaders tend to be really passionate advocates for whatever they're focused on. They have that deep-seated commitment to the cause, whatever that is, to the mission. We all know what the mission of Kiwanis is. And when a leader, really thrives and has a big passion for what they're focused on, then, there's nothing that can steer them from that commitment, right? And for that desire and that passion that they have. I would also say that they are visionaries. They can inspire, they can motivate. They are able to see what others cannot see. And I think that that's sometimes the best leaders can do that, right? They can see sand and the castle that it will eventually make. Okay. They're change agents. They're the ones that are going to be saying, hey, we need to be a catalyst for change, even though it's not easy. And even though they might not be the first one to do it, they're going to know that we do need to do that. We've already talked about they're action oriented, but I know that I could have spent, just an hour just on this slide alone. So I have shared some things that I think are qualities of a good leader, but what are your thoughts? What do you think make a good leader? Put those in the chat now, or feel free to unmute yourself. What do you think makes a good leader? Go ahead, Joel.
So I've been banging my chest on this since I first entertained the idea of running for governor. And I always said it is the job of a leader, number one, to create new leaders. And if you listen, I believe it was Bill Gates who once said, we hire great people to listen to them, not for us to tell them to do. So that's the clear path of somebody listening to future leaders and then developing them. And unfortunately, I just don't think we do that really well. And we need to change our mindset. that falls into the same bucket of water as, well, we've never done it that way anymore, or it doesn't work if we do it like that. We have to train ourselves to listen to other people, follow what they're doing, and guide them. And when you look at what you have up on the screen here, to be able to listen to them, to be able to see what they're talking about, to be able to communicate back and forth with them, and then to be a problem solver to determine how it could work, not shake our heads and say it won't work.
Right. I love that. Thank you for sharing. What else? Stella, I see that You put in the chat, inspire others, engage others to serve with your passion. Absolutely. Go ahead, Vicki.
Speaking of inspiring others, that's what I was thinking about generally, is inspire others to bring new ideas to the front and share them, and have them and share those ideas with whoever is in their leadership chain.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Okay, so now we've talked about what is succession planning, and we know what it is. We know that we have to have leaders in order to have a succession plan. So now let's spend a couple of minutes talking about the actual process of this plan, okay? And I have the process up on the screen as I see it, okay? So the first one, we have to define the roles. We have to ensure the vision. We have to make the ask. Number 4, we have to have access to training and cross training. And then we have to provide mentoring. Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit more. What do I mean by defining the role? Okay, so I honestly think that our leaders today are doing things that they have self-assigned them versus that are actually in their job description. When was the last time we looked at the job description for our club president? Is there a job description for the membership committee? Yes, there is. But is there a job description for the spirit committee? Maybe, maybe not. When was the last time we looked at job descriptions? I can almost guarantee you that there are people in your clubs right now who are saying, you want me to be the secretary? Absolutely not. I see everything that they have to do, and I certainly don't want to do that. They're stressed out all the time, right? But it's because they're taking on the responsibility that they probably shouldn't be doing, right? Like, who says it is the club secretary's responsibility to line up speakers every month? Well, maybe it's not in your club, but in some clubs, maybe it is, because you know why? That has been put on their plate for whatever reason. Okay, so the first step is not only to define the role, but to really lay out, here's what people are responsible for. Okay, and I think when it comes to that, we also have to say, what is the culture of our organization? Okay, what is the culture of our club? Is it the culture that we are, led by our committees, and that our committees are doing the majority of the work? Is it our culture that we don't use committees? If you aren't, we probably should be using them, right? So what does that look like? Because Judy's culture is going to vary from Matt's culture, right? And they're going to be doing some things the same and some things differently. So we all just have to be thinking about that too, okay? And then finally, I think we need to go back to what are people really responsible for? Think about that for a minute. What are they really responsible for? Does everyone have a job? Maybe, maybe not. The next concept is ensure the vision. What do I mean by that? I specifically mean that we need to make sure that our organization, our clubs, have a clear vision, okay? Because if we don't have a clear vision, then we are going to be circling down the drain, friends, and we're going to be spinning in circles that we do not need to be going to, okay? So what are some ways that we can ensure that we're following the vision, okay? One thing is like I already mentioned, do we have a strategic plan? If not, do we at least have goals? If you don't, you need to reach out to Sarah. You need to reach out to the people around you and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's get something started, right? The second thing is, let's give feedback to our current members about our current happenings. Okay, let's say hey, when was the last time we did an evaluation or appraisals? And I don't mean it needs to be something super formal, right? But it could be something that's like, hey, let's evaluate the project that we just did. If you were the one that was spearheading that project, let's review that. That's something I do on a constant basis. Actually, I'm going to do it with Joel here soon. We were just on a club opening together in New York, and that's something that we need to do is let's evaluate that process and see how do we do? What do we want to do differently in the future? Okay. And then finally, I think it's something that we need to evaluate the current situation of our board. I was just at this conference on Monday and Tuesday, and one of the things said is that it was for organizations, kind of like Kiwanis, and what they were saying is that they were struggling with finding board members that they could relate to. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And they were saying, well, the future is that we have a bunch of baby boomers on our board right now, and we are an organization that we're trending to where we're going to have Gen Z running it here in the next couple of years, right? But we don't have any Gen Z people involved in our committee right now, so we need to change that. So that leads to the bigger conversation of, do we have who we need in the room? Because if we want change and if we want a pipeline, we have to have the right people in place. And we have to be intentional about that too. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. The next thing I want to share is all about making the ask, okay? And this is a super easy concept that I want to talk about, okay? This concept is all about, you know your club best, right? Matt Wise, you know the members in your club better than I will ever know them, right? However, you may not know the newest member in your club as well, but you might want to reach out to them and say, hey, what are you all about? Let's have coffee and let's talk about it, because maybe they have a skill that they want to use to become some type of leader. And here's a caveat to that, okay? What I will say is that if there is a banker that just joined your club, do not ask them to be the treasurer, right? Do not ask them that, because maybe they don't want to do in volunteer wise what they do for a living. Okay. If they ask you, hey, I have some experience in finance, I would love to be the treasurer, sign them up and sign them up fast. Don't lose them. But don't necessarily automatically think, ooh, do we have a spot for you? Because maybe they have some other skills that they want to learn and that they could grow, because we're all about helping people grow, right? If we're not, maybe we need to look at that. So the next thing I want to talk about is that cross training. Okay. Let's say that, again, we've talked about that institutional knowledge. Okay. So let's say that there has been a club secretary in your club that has been the club secretary for 5 years. And I've seen it. I've seen club secretaries that have been there for 30 years, right? So I see some head nods, right? That's probably a very true reality. Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that. However, what if that person doesn't want to be the club secretary anymore and they move to somewhere else, right? What are you going to do if they haven't cross-trained you? So here's what we need to start doing. People are going to look at me like I have two heads when I say this, but hear me out, okay? We need to make sure that every single person in the club knows how to do the club secretary position. We need to make sure every single person in the club knows what it takes to run a fundraiser. We need to make sure that every single person in the club knows how to be a greeter, right? Think of those little roles that we have in our club. Does every single person know how to do them? I know that might sound silly, but I think that is one of the things we need to be thinking about. And we need to be like, hey, are we setting our members up for success here? Or are we setting them up to fail? Because here's the thing. We're going to talk about this a little bit later too. But you can teach people, those hard skills any day, right? You can teach them, here's how to run a report. Here's how to fill out a roster. Here's how to open a bank account. But it's those soft skills that people need and that everyone has that are a little bit different, right? So it's that soft skills that we need to lean on, that we can say, hey, what are we going to do? What can you bring to the table? Oh, Brittany, you're really great at communication. Great. That's something that I struggle with. So maybe you can help teach me some of those skills. And I see in the chat, thank you, Brittany, for sharing that. Patty's going on 24 years as the club secretary. That club would be lost without you, right? Do we have people who are following you so that you can, when you decide not to be club secretary anymore, they're going to know what to do? If not, maybe we should start that. Now, here, I want to know your feedback, friends. Do you look at me like I have three heads when I say that, or is that something you do in your club? Do you do any cross training in your clubs? You can give me a head shake or head shake. No. I'm seeing some no's.
But Emily, if I can make a statement
Please.
Regarding having anybody at any job for too long, it's another club here in Wisconsin, Upper Michigan. The treasurer, or was it the secretary? I can't remember which one it was, died.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been doing it for 36 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nobody knew what he was doing.
Right. I have seen that before, for sure.
That's a wake-up call
It is.
for
And,
everybody.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that that's something that's so interesting, because here's the reason I want you to cross train. Okay. And this may be a new concept, but here's the thing. If everyone in your club knows how to be the club secretary, then they're going to know what the club secretary is doing. And they're going to know, like, here is what role that they're fitting in. And, walk a mile in my shoes, right? It's one of those things you never know until you do it. So, and here's the other beauty about that. Okay. So if I ask Judy to cross train with me to be club secretary, she may find out that she hates that job and she never wants to do it. Right. But we'll never know until she has an opportunity to do that. So maybe we should think about that more. Just a thought, think about that later on. And the other thing, and I think this is probably the most important thing in the process of succession. Okay. If we're doing proper succession planning right, we are allowing members in our club to have a mentoring opportunity. Okay. We as Kiwanians love and we pride ourselves on the fact that we help youth, right? We help kids around the world. One of the things people love most about that is they can provide that mentoring opportunity to youth. I would argue that adults need that mentoring sometimes even more than our youth do, right? And those people that are around us are learning so much from each other just by being around them, right? Like I may learn so much from Penny just by spending an hour with her, right? Because she has different experiences than I do. So what can I learn from that? So the ability to provide that mentoring is so important. And not only can we help nurture them, and we can also encourage them, hey, have you ever thought about doing XYZ? Because we as humans, not only do we naturally like to talk, whether we're talkative or not, we like to talk about ourselves. However, when asked about like, hey, like, what's the best thing about you? People are naturally inclined not to be able to answer that question. Right. And I think that's something we need to think about. So if someone were to say, Emily, like, what's the best quality about you? I don't know, but it's a lot easier from someone else. Like, hopefully my husband would be able to say, oh, here's 5 great things about you, Emily. Right. Because we shine differently for other people than we do for ourselves. Right. So if someone were to come up to me and say, hey, Emily, you did really great at running that fundraiser for us the other week. Have you ever thought about doing that on a bigger scale and doing our annual fundraiser or our signature service project? Or have you ever thought about being our vice president? We really could use you in this skill to do XYZ. And that means more. And like Sarah mentioned earlier, if someone asks you, that means they need you and they really want you to not only grow, but help serve a purpose. And we as humans naturally need to be serving a purpose. We are naturally inclined to want to do that in some way. So let's talk a little bit about that training piece, okay? Up on the screen, you're going to have some thoughts, and those are train all leaders. You must have a standard curriculum. There are always best practices, and we need to provide resources, okay? So in order for a leader to be able to do their job properly, they have to have the right the right resources, right? And I think we need to be upfront with them. And here's a fun fact for you, for those who don't know, and I'm going to say this because I know everyone on this call already knows the resources that Kiwanis International provides, but maybe someone who's watching the recording might not. Resources that Kiwanis can give you, not only about communication, about leadership. Here's a fun plug for Amplify. If you don't know what Kiwanis Amplify is, you should look into it because it's a great program. But even peer-to-peer, right? I'm going to learn something from Vicki that I might not know that will help me become a better leader, right? And the same thing from Karen is going to be able to teach me something that I might see in a different lens just by hearing it from her. So we have to know where to go to those resources. I might even ask if Sarah Zuleta would put in the chat the leadership guide. This is a great place to start for our leaders because it is a really quick go-to manual that will talk to us about the positions such as like the president, the secretary, the treasurer, so on and so forth. And this is not all inclusive. There are many positions that are not listed in here that you might have in your club, but it's a great place to start. So you know actually what is required of them. Here are the actual job descriptions, so on and so forth. And when it comes to training and education, although Kiwanis has many, many great resources, I would encourage you to do your own research. Do your own type of learning. Listen to those podcasts, read those books, and say, here's what I can add to the conversation, because we all need more of that. So a quote I have up here on the screen, and I think this is a perfect summary, okay? Good leaders develop ideas, great leaders develop people, but the best leaders develop new leaders. That ties us into that succession planning, right? We need to have a succession plan because what comes after us is more important than anything we will ever do. If we are setting people up for success, then we're doing our jobs. So now I want to talk a little bit about best practices, okay? So I love, if you don't know who this is up on the screen, this is Pat Head Summit. She is the former Tennessee Lady Volunteers basketball coach. She is hands down the best ever. And you cannot win an argument to tell me otherwise, because I think she's the greatest. So she has so many great things, and you can see many of them on the screen. I agree with all of them, but I think some of the things that I would encourage us to think about is make hard work your passion. What would that look like? What if we had a winning attitude? What if we understood that change is a must and that we were competitive with that? A couple other things in terms of best practices is that we need to find future leaders from our new members. Our new members have new ideas, they have new thoughts. They're probably going to be the ones that can help us get plugged into new ideas and new concepts. We also need to be daring and take risks. And I will say a caveat to this, let's take calculated risk, right? Let's be intentional with those. And if we fail, that's okay. We have to know like where we're going to go from that though. Some other thoughts that I would share with you is that we need to have recognition for achievement. We need to have volunteer positions that people are passionate about. So if membership's not your jam, that's okay. What are you passionate about and how can we get you plugged into that? We might want to conduct exit interviews. So for the outgoing president, are we doing those interviews? Are we saying, hey, here's what we loved about this position, here's what we didn't, so that we're giving opportunities to change something? Maybe we should be doing exit interviews. It doesn't have to be anything formal, friends. It could be something that's super like informal. It could be, give me 3 bullet points. Let's go out to coffee and chat. Okay. Also, we need to make sure as we are transitioning, here's a big piece of advice. Okay. As we are transitioning from leader to leader at the end of the year, it would be really helpful and in your best interest to tell the community that you're changing to. Time and time again, I see a school, for example. A school might have a really great relationship with Joel Harris. And then Vicki comes in and says, oh, I'm the new president, but the school thinks it's still Joel, right? And so they're not understanding, oh, my new person that I'm going to go to is Vicki, and here's how we're going to execute our relationship and establish those lines, right? So that's something we probably need to tell those community stakeholders and those partners that we work with is like, hey, we have some new leadership and here's how we're seeing this going. So those are some of my tips and tricks. I want to know from you, what tips and tricks do you have in terms of succession planning? What are your thoughts? What is working for you or what's not working for you? Sarah, let me know if I've missed anything in the chat.
I mean, Matt mentioned basically it boils down to effective communication. You saw that.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. Communication is the most important in everything, in my opinion. Oh, I see it, Matt. Don't keep your leadership decisions a secret. Absolutely. Let your committee members know what and why. Why is that so important, Matt? Tell me why.
Well, you know, the best way I think I can describe it quickly, and I'm going to use your example when, you know, there was a club where a treasurer died, and you know you're spending then a lot of your time trying to catch up. And in this case, when you have, when you're maybe in charge of a committee or whatever, and you know you're not going to be there forever, or you're not going to want to do it forever, someone's going to have to take those reins. And while they can still have the ability to do it the way they want to do it and approach it the way they want to approach it, they still need to know the, I guess, the ABCs, you know, the basics of why it is that you're doing certain things. Maybe they don't like it and they can change it when they're in charge. But it at least then lets them know a little bit of, as to why you're doing it. And that really truly helps with the succession of it, because you're building your own team. You know, we're only as strong as our weakest member. And I know that's cliche, but you know, if we're truly working at something as a team, then that's the approach we have to take.
I love that. I have a sign right here on my board that says that. It's great. The other thing, and I think the reason why the why is so important, and I've said this, actually, I talked to Pennsylvania friends about this last year. We as humans, and mostly organizations, we know what we do, we know how we do it, but we struggle with the why, right? So even a simple thing as a secretary report, right? Not that that's ever a simple thing, but we might know what it is and how to do it, but why are we doing this? Why does this matter? Because again, I'm taking the time out of my life to put in the secretary and to do the secretary report, but does it mean anything to anyone else besides me? I think we can do a better job of understanding the why and explaining the why. Penny, I see in the chat you said, I offered to do a one-on-one with a board member to step into VP position, going through the websites, the club policies, et cetera. That is so important. That one-on-one time means something, whether the person appreciates it or not. That means something. Good job. Joel, did you have your hand up? AirPod situation.
Yeah.
There you go. I got you.
It's better. Okay. So remember, perception is everything. People watch their leaders and they look to see how their leaders handle themselves in situations. If you get into a situation where somebody, let's say, leaves and your club treasurer or secretary is not there, don't panic. Don't show people that you're panicking. You know, everything is a situation that we can work through. And once again, it is our responsibilities as leaders is to show people how we work through and how we remain calm. I always loved the idea that Tiger Woods walked around in his shoes with a 4 and 7. He said he never let his emotions go below a 4 nor above a 7. So he could always keep that even keel. And that's what people have to see from us. If they see us panic, they're going to panic. If they see us bang our chest, they're going to bang our chest. They need to see a clean forward movement, even keel.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Any other tips and tricks that you've seen that's been helpful to you in terms of leadership or succession planning? All right. Well, we've talked about what succession planning is. We've talked about what leaders are, because we have to have leaders to have succession, right? And then we've kind of talked about the process of how we do that. So now, what if we do this and we do it all successfully, right? What if we have that strong leadership pipeline? What would that look like? Well, on the screen, I have a couple of ideas for you. Maybe that would look like we have an effective nominating committee and or process, right? Maybe that would look like we have multiple candidates for key offices in our clubs. Maybe that would look like our leaders are having fun and it's written all over their faces. Maybe that would look like we have excitement for club success and we are all on the same page. Maybe that looks like there's a celebration at every meeting for something. Or maybe that would look like we have our current and our past leaders mentoring future leaders. Maybe this is what it would look like. Maybe there's a ton of other things we could put on here, as I'm sure we could, right? Success looks like we're having a leadership pipeline that's meaningful, that's intentional, and that's working for us. Friends, if what we're doing is not working, then we need to do something else, right? We need to do something else, and we can take the steps to do it. And it might not happen overnight. We have a whole team of people, including me, that I'm happy to help you get there. So what questions or thoughts do we have as we are wrapping up our time together? Thoughts, questions, ideas? Going once, going twice. To Sarah Zuleta. Friends, I am so thankful for you hanging out with me tonight. I know you had stuff to do, and I'm glad you're hanging out with me. So if you ever need anything, I'll put my information in the chat. It's just esaulfrank@kiwanis.org. But I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yes, can we bottle your enthusiasm, as Patty said? That'd be amazing.
Here we go. Cheers to you. I will gladly share it.
Nice, nice. I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us. I think it really hits home for many of us. I know I was just thinking about all the different things, and especially in the governor role, and just for on a district level, just looking at the leadership pipeline or lack thereof, to be honest. But we're working on cultivating some emerging leaders. And so I thank you for sharing that. So, well, if you loved this session, again, we have continuing ed sessions every month. Next month is what we call from our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. We call it our Jedi Month. We have one April 6th at 7 p.m. and it's called Understanding Intersectionality. It is going to be hosted by the Jedi Committee. It is going to be presented by Nathaniel Broadus and Micah Williams. They're experts in this area. They're phenomenal from the Pittsburgh area. We will learn how to look beyond our differences to understand that we all have way more in common than you might think. This extremely informative, engaging workshop will teach us how to look for and celebrate our connectiveness within our personal relationships, within our clubs, and within our communities. So join us then. It will be the same link to register. We'll post that on our PA Kiwanis website. I think this will be an excellent workshop, and I encourage you guys to attend as well. And this will be recorded. Emily's slides will be posted on our pakiwanis.org website in the next day, if not tonight, we'll see. And this is already on Facebook Live, and also we have a YouTube channel as well. I know there's a few folks that are outside of our district, so I will share our Linktree link so you can get to know us. Oops, if I can paste correctly. Okay. There it is. All right. All sorts of mouse issues right now. Okay, here it is. So that link there, if you want to click on that, that basically has all our links to all our resources in Pennsylvania. So you can check out our continuing education. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Emily, I love you.
Thanks, Kathy. Love you
Thanks
too.
for coming to the Emily Fan Club.
Yay!
Thanks, everybody.
Sarah?
See you soon. Bye.
Yeah.